This is the barn-find Pentium Pro, and it's the first ever retro project that I ever undertook on this channel. It's also the machine that I use the least because at the heart of this machine is a SCSI hard disk, and that is slow, small and noisy. But not for long. So this is the BlueSCSI version 2, and you probably already know what this is, but if you've stumbled upon this video purely by chance, it's a device designed to replicate older SCSI hard disks using a Raspberry Pi Pico and an SD card, so that you don't have to faff around with 30-year-old piles of spinning rust. Barn-find Pentium Pro has such a hard disk, a 2GB IBM one that I picked up new old stock, and it's the main source of noise in this machine, so replacing it is a no-brainer. I shouldn't overlook the fact that replacing it also allows me to play around with other OSs on this machine much more readily, but that's not the main point of what we're doing here. The BlueSCSI has been around for a few years now. It's an open source project that was originally aimed at older Macintosh devices where SCSI drives were more common, but it's since been tested with a whole bunch of different SCSI controllers, and as luck would have it, the Adaptec 2940 controller that's in my machine is shown in the compatibility list, albeit when tested inside a Next workstation and not an IBM-compatible PC. That's close enough for me to be content that this is worth looking into though, so shall we have a play? First things first, I need access to the inside of the machine, which means removing the yellowed front fascia from the case. It's hard to believe, but I've already retrobrighted this once. But as we've got it off, I'll peel the stickers off and get it in a peroxide bath while we work on the rest of the system. Next, I need to take the wraparound shroud off, and with that out of the way, we have access to the machine's insides. Now, I don't need to install an expansion card for this project. The BlueSCSI just interfaces directly with our existing SCSI controller. But as I'm in here, I'm going to have a little shuffle around. First off, I'm going to remove this Ethernet card as I really don't have much use for it in this system. And then I'm going to install this USB PCI card so that under Windows 98, I can make use of the mass storage driver to easily move files onto this PC. With that done, we can look at getting the BlueSCSI installed. First and foremost, let's have a look at the SCSI devices we already have connected. We have the original spinning hard disk, of course, and then we have the two SCSI optical drives, and then we have this Tandberg tape backup solution here at the top. Now, I'll be honest, I've always left this in here not because it was an original part of the system, but because removing it would leave a gaping hole in the front of the machine. But seeing as the BlueSCSI will need to be accessible from the front, and because I don't have the proprietary drive rails to make use of the available slot at the bottom, it's time for it to come out. I never did get around to testing this, but maybe one day in another system. Anyway, with that out, we have the ideal placement for our BlueSCSI, so let's swivel back to that. This card came more or less completely assembled from Flame Lily here in the UK. I just need to solder on the power and SCSI connectors, which is simple enough to do given that they're through-hole components. And with that done, we're ready to get this installed. Before we continue, this video is brought to you by Topdon and their TC002C Duo smartphone camera. The TC002C is a thermal camera for Apple and Android phones, and with a free app, it transforms your device into a full-featured thermal camera. This provides information that sight alone doesn't. For example, you can see where the wooden joists in my living room ceiling are and identify gaps in insulation by the lower surface temperature. On electronic devices, you can easily spot hotspots, helping you prevent cooling issues or identify failed chips without direct testing. As a fault-finding tool, it's incredibly helpful. Plus, you can pretend you're in Metal Gear Solid by tracking footsteps around the room, or seeing what body parts have touched surfaces. The free app offers features like showing the highest and lowest temperatures in any scene, picture-in-picture mode for recording a customer's premises, digital zoom for focusing on problems, and thermal image super resolution to improve image quality using your phone's processing power. However, it's worth noting in my experience, this did lead to some weird distortions in some use cases. Overall, I'm super impressed with this device, and at its current price on Amazon, it's a great buy for retro repairs or general home DIY. If you're interested, check the link in the description. Thanks to TopDon for sending this over, and now back to the video. To get our BlueSCSI mounted, I've gone ahead and 3D printed this adapter that will see the circuit board mounted in a 5¼ inch bay. This is actually a design I found on Thingiverse, but I personally didn't like the grille design that they went with, so I amended it in Tinkercad to give it a smooth face, and I think it suits this build better. I just need to transfer the rails over onto our 3D printed enclosure. I hate raw dogging into PLA. The whole thing can then be slotted back in the front of the machine. I just needed to release the CD drive below to give myself enough slack on the cable, and just listen to this satisfying click. Oh yeah, that's the good stuff. So anyway, the BlueSCSI comes pre-configured with the firmware written onto the Pi Pico's internal memory. So to get it working, all we need to do is install an SD card with an exFAT or FAT32 partition on it. Personally, I went with the Western Digital Purple 32GB card, as I'm a good boy and went with one of the models recommended on the BlueSCSI website. They recommend you go with a card designed for high endurance, though multiple regular cards have also been tested and work just fine. So the first thing I'm going to do is connect this SD card up to my computer, and as I'm on a Mac, I'll go into the disk utility, select the drive and erase it. And then I'm going to give it an exFAT partition, as that allows us to create much larger files, which is important because the hard disks we configure on this SD card, and yes, I did say disks, are actually just image files which are then presented back to the host system as a disk. So with the drive formatted, I need to create some image files. Now, there are handy files available on the BlueSCSI site for common OSs, and in fact, there is a 2GB image file available which comes preloaded with MS-DOS and Windows 3.1. But as I want a larger file, and Windows 98, I'm going to use a free utility called DiskJockey to create some custom files. DiskJockey has a bunch of presets for certain systems. If I select the Macintosh tab here, you can see I can create an image for any number of compatible systems, but as we're going to be using this with a PC, I'll opt to specify the capacity myself and put in a disk size of 8GB. Further down, you can see we already have the BlueSCSI selected from the list of emulation devices. The only thing I'm going to check is that the SCSI ID is 1, because that's the ID of the current hard disk, and I want this image file to be the bootable drive in place of the spinning disk. As I change this, you can see the file name below is changed, and that's because the BlueSCSI uses this file name to deduce what sort of drive the image file is designed to replicate. HD indicates that this image file is a hard disk. The next number represents the SCSI device ID, which, remember, is needed for a SCSI device. Each device must be set a unique number within the system it's connected to. The next number is the LUN, or logical unit number, and that's not a currently used feature of BlueSCSI, so we have to leave that as 0. Then, after the underscore, we can specify the sector size, and 512 is the default and recommended for most use cases, although we could change this to other factors of 2 between 256 and 8192 for devices that require it. After that, you've got some free text, and DiskJockey automatically populates that with the size of the drive, though we can change that name to whatever we like. I'm going to call mine boot, as this will be my boot drive. And then we have HDA as a file extension, which is again what our BlueSCSI expects to see for its drive image files. We click Create the image, and we get a circle of death while the image file is created and copied to the SD card. My only criticism of this otherwise awesome package is that it would have been nice to get some sort of progress indicator. I was worried for a while that it had crashed, but by opening up Activity Monitor, I can see that DiskJockey is writing out data. And sure enough, once it got to just over 8GB, the software indicated it was finished. And with that done, we should now have what the BlueSCSI will present to the system as an 8GB hard disk that we can use as a boot drive. But we're not done yet. I also want to create a second drive image, also 8GB, and this one will give a drive ID of 2, and we'll call this one games. Any idea what it's for? The process for this is the same, so we'll skip past that. And then lastly, I also want to emulate a CD-ROM drive just to make it easier to get Windows 98 installed. And that's actually really simple. You just take your 100% original and genuine Windows 98 ISO file, drop it onto the SD card, and then rename it with a similar naming convention as the hard disk images. First comes CD, then the drive ID, and we'll call this one 3, and then an underscore, and then the sector size of 2048, and we keep the ISO file extension. So all being well, when we boot up the PC with this installed, we should see 3 SCSI drives, 2 hard disks, and a CD-ROM drive. Should we give it a go? Okay, so good news is I haven't broken anything and our drives are all showing up in the SCSI controller's BIOS. That's a great start. Our 2 hard disk images are showing with SCSI IDs 1 and 2, and with drive letters C and D allocated to them by the SCSI controller. Then we have our Windows 98 CD image, which has the SCSI ID 3. This hasn't been allocated a drive letter yet, as that's done at a later point by the operating system when it loads the CD-ROM drivers. And lastly, we have our 2 physical CD-ROM drives, which I've rejumpered to be SCSI IDs 4 and 5. So I'll go ahead and insert a USB key in the Gotek with a Windows 98 boot floppy image on it, and then we can restart and begin the process of installing an OS on this machine. The nice thing is that the Windows 98 boot disk already contains a compatible SCSI CD-ROM driver, so I'll go ahead and select the first option, and we can see here that the Windows 98 CD image is picked up as a drive and allocated a drive letter. And after a few seconds, we boot into the Windows 98 installer and... oh. Well, that's not good. Now, the installer is asking for the CD-ROM to be in drive D, which we've allocated as our second hard disk partition. It does say or your CD-ROM drive, but I wonder if it needs to be drive D that contains the CD-ROM, so I'll go ahead and remove that D drive for now. And yeah, it looks like that was the problem. The system is now formatting our primary hard disk partition, and honestly, from there, this was the same as any other Windows 98 installation, so let's skip to the finished product. So okay, the change to the outward look is pretty muted, but small differences matter, and the ability to add CD images or even entirely new hard disk partitions just by removing the SD card and copying stuff over makes a huge difference. Not only that, I can easily swap out SD cards. So if I don't want to use Windows 98 anymore and instead want, I don't know, Windows NT, I can swap in an SD card with a different image on and off we go. It also means I can easily back up the contents of a hard disk before I make any changes. So if anything goes wrong, I can just copy the known good version back over and hey presto, working system. In terms of performance, I must admit it's a bit of a mixed bag. The system certainly feels much more responsive, and opening applications feels like a smoother experience, or at least as smooth as a fully patched version of Windows 98 gets. However, when I conducted some tests, I found that if you're copying large files from one area of the SD card to another, then it's actually a lot slower than the original hard disk. I mean, copying the Quake 2 folder from one part of the hard disk to another took 1 minute and 52 seconds on the spinning Rust, but over 3 minutes on the SD card via BlueSCSI. I mean, I guess that's not exactly a real-world scenario, but it's worth bearing in mind that sustained read and write access does seem to be slower than a decent SCSI hard disk, or at least that's what my very limited testing shows. But that wasn't my only reason for this upgrade. That old SCSI hard disk was ridiculously loud. So how does the system sound now that there's fewer moving parts inside? I mean, you'll have to trust me, that's loads better. All you can hear now are the 3 internal fans, the one on the CPU itself, the one in the power supply, and the one at the front of the case. I mean, I'm not going to lie, I do sort of miss that clicking noise, but I'm sure I'll get over it. After installing the BlueSCSI, it became pretty obvious that the next loudest part was the old intake fan at the front of the case. So as a small side quest, I removed the fan housing and mocked up a new one that had a mount for a 120mm fan. And this has reduced noise levels further still, while keeping that essential airflow in place. So there we have it guys, a long overdue upgrade to the Barnfine Pentium Pro, and I'm really happy with how it's turned out. The machine is now much more usable, and it's going to allow me to realise what I always intended, to play those early glide games like they were supposed to be played. But what do you think? Am I finally done upgrading this machine? Or is there something else I'm missing out that you think deserves to be in here? Let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to get back to you. Other than that, thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this content, there is a button explicitly for that, and you want to see more of this sort of thing from me, you can subscribe via the button on screen now. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye bye.